Hey there and welcome. I am so glad to have you with me tonight. I am excited about this topic and I hope you are too. This is the opportunity that I am taking to iridology. We're going to get into it tonight. We're going to talk about the what, the why, and the how of iridology for health professionals. So I just want to really make it clear that you will get more out of me if you play with me in my sandbox. So what I mean by that is if you drop comments in the webinar chat, if you answer questions and respond when I'm asking for input, I will give you heart and soul. So seriously, get in there and play with me. I would love to know if you've got any iridology background already. If you do, give me a big fat yes in the chat box if you've got any training whatsoever, just so I know if I'm working with mostly beginners. And I love it when we've got beginners, but also if we're working with people who are a little more experienced. Oh, so Carol says, best teacher you. Thank you, Carol. Yes, Carol has completed the dynamic iridology course, and I'm glad you're here with me tonight, Carol. I don't pay her to say nice things. She's just naturally nice like that. So this is good and honest too. All righty. Anybody else have any background in iridology? If not, that tells me how I need to craft what I'm presenting to you this evening. All right. So I want you to put your mind at ease that I'm not going to sell you anything here tonight. I'm going to share some great information with you. And I want to get ready to do this deep dive. Are you ready? If you are ready for this deep dive, I want you to give me a yes in the chat box. Give me just a yes, just a simple yes in the chat box if you're ready for a deep dive tonight. Yes, of course, Carol's ready. Yeah, and Christine, yeah, fantastic. So good. Yeah, excellent. We've got Jennifer weighing in on this and Shannon, fantastic. Yes, thank you so much for that. Oh, yeah. Ooh, I can feel the energy. This is so good. Okay, so we do need to do this little disclaimer that Cobblestone Health and Iridology Education and myself are not responsible for any results you get, good or bad, from using the information I'm going to share with you tonight. You alone are responsible for the results that you get. If you use iridology, you are responsible to have the appropriate liability insurance. You are required to respect and adhere to local laws regarding required credentials for the use of iridology and the offering of nutritional or supplement advice. All right, we can all agree on that I'm not responsible for you. I'm just sharing information. Fantastic. So as we do this, I want to know if any of these are the reasons why you're here tonight, or if there's another reason. So maybe you are a health practitioner and you're looking for a low invasive way to assess your client and it's not working for you. You feel like you must be doing something wrong. It's not doing what you were taught it was supposed to do. It's not behaving properly. Or you're just curious and you want a low commitment way to investigate iridology further. I'd like you to look at those and give me a 1, 2, or 3, or a 1, 2, and 3, or whatever your reasons are for being here. Drop that in the chat box for me. Now, if you have another reason for being here, I'd love to see that. And if you want to private message it to me, I won't read it out loud. If you're comfortable sharing that with the entire group, that would be great too. So I want to know, are you here for a number 1, a number 2, a number 3, all of the above? So for looking for a low invasive way and wanting to investigate, that's brilliant, absolutely brilliant, great way to do it. Anybody else? Love to have more of you weigh in on this one again, so that I know what direction to take the presentation. And I've got my slides, but you know, I'm pretty good at doing things on the fly. 3 and a future number 1, says Jennifer. Love it. So good. So good. Well, I am really glad that you're with me. I'm honored that you're with me tonight. I'm just, for those of you who are a 3, I'm going to ask you another question here that I don't usually ask. Have you been looking for an iridology teacher for a while? Or is this really your first dip your toes in? Just let me know in the chat box there. Again, you can send it to me privately. I know this is kind of vulnerable information, but we're a safe group here. Shannon says first. Ooh, I'm so excited. Ooh. Allison says she's been following me for a long time. Allison, thank you. I'm in need of an urgent detox with guidance from a professional. Also, I want to learn. Okay, Allison. First step, never heard of iridology before, and I love to learn new things. Oh, Christine, that's so amazing. Great. This is my first of two, and I'm sure you are the best. Oh, fantastic. Fantastic. So she's already studied iridology, but she is on her way into me hopefully very soon. Marie, it's so good to see you again. Some of you feel like I'm not going to say old friends. That sounds like it's that, we're getting up there in years, which I'm not going to say anything about my age. But some of you I've known for a while, and it's just good to have you with me. So let's look at these a little bit deeper. Maybe you've heard about or experienced iridology as a diagnostic tool, and you're looking for a low invasive way to assess your clients. And so if this is your reason, you might be surprised to learn that knowing how to do iridology properly can save you hours of time. And there's lots of ways to do iridology, but I'm going to begin sharing with you tonight an efficient way to do iridology that works beautifully. When I teach iridology, I teach it at a professional level, and that will allow you to do a solid and appropriate iris assessment with program creation for your client in 20 minutes. Does that floor any of you? Have you seen iris assessments that take hours, and then you get this long list of information from it, and it's just overwhelming? I'm going to teach you how you can do it in 20 minutes. I'm going to show you a little bit of that tonight. And the beautiful thing about that is that if you work in 1 hour blocks with your client appointments, it means that you've got 40 minutes in that appointment to build rapport, to really get to know your client, for your client to feel like you care. And we all know in holistic healing, that compassion, that caring, that connection is so critical. And it's sadly what's missing from so much of the medical model, correct? And I'm not dissing the medical model. I'm just saying that's what they've become, because that's what we've made them to be, right? Iridology is so wonderful for developing rapport and helping you to gather other pertinent information. And the bonus here is it will encourage your clients to come back for follow-ups. And that's great because it means that you're creating a long-term client, right? So if your reason for being here is that you've heard about iridology and you want to look at a low invasive way of assessing your clients, then you are in the right place. I'm going to share a lot of information with you tonight. Just going to scroll back through these comments. Jennifer says, I'm new to iridology, but heard of it from my sister when she told me about it. I lit up, so I became curious. And could be a beautiful skill and knowledge to have. Oh my goodness, you are so right, Jennifer. It absolutely is. Carol says, can't wait to get to this with all your help. Absolutely, absolutely. Choice number two was you studied iridology already and it's not working. I'm going to tell you, that's how I came into constitutional iridology. We're going to talk about that in a few minutes, but this is something I take very seriously. If you've studied iridology, excuse me, and it's not working for you, it's not your fault. It is not your fault. I've had many students come to me who were previously certified by other instructors. They'd passed certification exams. They could spew information back on an exam, but give them a set of eyes to assess, and they were lost. Basically, they were taught nuts and bolts, but they were not taught the practical application. That's like showing somebody an engine and giving them a screwdriver and a wrench and say, here. Right? That's the exact same thing. You don't know what to do with the screwdriver and the wrench because you don't know what the engine is all about. Right? Maybe that there's a carburetor. I don't even know what I'm talking about here. And there's pistons and whatever. But if you don't know how to work with it, then the tools don't do you any good. So when students come to me with knowledge that they don't know how to use, they're coming because they feel like they've failed, because they've studied a skill and they don't know how to use it. The challenge here is that most teachers don't teach the application. Most teachers, and I've heard students say this to me, that their teachers had said to them after completing the course, after certifying, now what do I do? How do I use this? The teachers have said, oh, you'll figure it out. Now, I prefer to give my students a starting framework. So they get the nuts and bolts, but they get a framework as well. And then they get the long-term mentoring to go with it. So they've got a starting point. They may not end up practicing iridology exactly the way I've taught it to them, the way I do it, but at least they've got a starting point, and from there they can morph into what they need to do with it, right? So that doesn't mean you have to or will use the iridology, like I said, exactly the way I use it. It just means I'm giving you a really solid foundation on which you can build. And I will give you long-term support helping you to build that. So if you're already trained in iridology, but you're lacking confidence, maybe you've actually stopped doing iridology because it's not making sense, or maybe you want to add to your knowledge and be mentored, then welcome, you're in a good place. I seem to be developing a tickle in my throat, so I'm going to be sipping a lot of water. Oh, we've got Valerie Edgar here too. I'm seeing some students that I haven't seen in a while, and seeing names on the list that I haven't seen in a while. This is so good. Okay, I'm going to answer this question really quickly. Just let me scroll back here. Marie says, do you think we need to be fully certified with iridology 1 and 2 before we are qualified to practice through your program? Carol will agree with this. Carol, at what stage did I start pressuring you to start working with clients? Do you remember? Do you remember? I start trying to get you to work with clients after your second lesson. Out of 20. Yep, right away, Carol says. Second lesson. By the time you're halfway through, you should be charging a student rate for doing iris assessments as far as you know how to do them, right? So no, you don't need to be fully certified before you start using this. And if you wait to start using it till you're fully certified, you're going to forget it. And it's going to be overwhelming to actually integrate it all. You need to start practicing the integration really, really early. Okay, so important. Marie says, that sounds fantastic. Yeah, because even after the second lesson, even after some of what you're going to learn tonight, you will be able to help people. You will know more than they know. And you're not a professional yet, and I get that, but you will be able to help them. Okay. Number 3, you're just curious and you want a low commitment way to investigate it further. This is totally fair. Now, when I went to university as a young adult, I applied to 2 different schools that I thought I wanted to attend, and they were both excellent universities. They were both about 1,200 miles away from home. And my parents gave me their blessing to go to whichever school I wanted to go to. They were just fine with this. And so I was accepted to both of them, right? And the one, however, that won me over was the one that invited me down for a weekend to show me around the campus. I was being invited into the honors program. And so they invited all of the honors level students to come down for a weekend to participate on campus in some classes, to be shown around, basically to be sold on the campus, right? Which they didn't really have to sell me. I already knew the city it was in. I already knew I loved that city, and I was pretty sure that I'd be happy there. I would be happy at the other one too. But the one that won me over was the one that spent some time nurturing me, showing me what I was in for if I came to this school, right? Now, you need to do the same when you look for an iridology class. And that's exactly why I'm glad you're here tonight, because you should talk to the teacher. You should be able to sample their teaching style. You should get a sneak peek at the learning materials. Basically, you should be able to tour the campus, right? And if that's exactly why you're here tonight, I am so glad you are, and welcome. Again, this is an interactive thing that we're doing here tonight. I've got a lot to share with you, so I hope you've got a pen and a paper to write down any questions, to take notes on anything you want to take notes on. I'll be watching the chat box to answer questions and to see the answers to the questions I'm asking you as well. And if your questions are appropriate for where we're at, I will work them in. Otherwise, I'll try to get to them at the end of our time together. Does that sound fair? If that sounds good, give me a thumbs up. Let me know that that sounds like it would be a good way to work it tonight. Okay. Fantastic. Yeah, wonderful. Okay, quick introduction of myself here, because you do need to know who your tour guide is, right? You need to know who it is that wants to invite you to be a student, right? I am one of only 10 level 3 IPA certified instructors in the world so far. All right. IPA just introduced level 3 about 5 years ago. At level, it's you need level 1 and level 2 to be a certified iridologist. And the course that the program I'm going to describe to you tonight as we work through our evening encompasses all of level 1 and level 2. I call it dynamic iridology, and it is all of level 1 and level 2. Okay, so just so as we know that dynamic iridology is synonymous with 1 and 2, we've got it. So I've been in the holistic industry since 1981. I've been coaching people, and I started teaching about herbs and nutrition only a few years later because there was a lack of information. This is pre-internet, right? How many, I won't ask for a show of hands, but how many of you are old enough to remember life without the internet, right? Yeah, it was a pretty cool thing when it first came around. It's still pretty cool. But there was not a lot of information available here where I live. And so we had a few books like Jethro Kloss Back to Eden, Herbally Yours by Penny Royal. There's a few others that came out shortly thereafter. So I actually started on this health journey when I was 20 years of age. I had some health problems and the doctors couldn't seem to sort it out. I was still in university at the time. I was studying to be a school teacher, but I ended up dropping out just 2 semesters before graduating to get married. I realized I was not going to be happy teaching children, but I knew I loved teaching. I'd always wanted to be a teacher. I thought I would be a teacher of children. My dad was a school teacher. My grandmother was a school teacher. It was in my blood. I thought that's where I was supposed to end up, but that's not where I was supposed to be. I was supposed to end up teaching technical things to adults. And that is where I just thrive. And I love sharing what I know. I've studied iridology and herbology and nutrition and so many other things with so many other teachers that I've lost count. Any of you like that? How many of you are perpetual students? I want to see a show of hands. If you're a perpetual student, you can just say me if you want, or you can do a hand raise. But let me know if you just love learning and you're always looking for a good class. Yeah, yeah, most of you. Yeah, oh yeah, fantastic. This is so good because, you know, the fact of the matter is, I love this. This is so good. Marie says, me and you can never stop learning. This is so true, so true. Because there's always more to learn in holistic health, and there's research being done in iridology. So there's always more to learn in iridology, right? It is so exciting. Over the years, I have written and self-published many books. All of them are currently out of print because it's just hard to keep them up to date with new research. It really is. The only one that is still available is the Dynamic Iridology Assessment System course textbook, and that is available to my students as a digital book. I've designed and taught many courses, including Dynamic Iridology, which is an IPA-approved iridology course, again, that includes level 1 and level 2. I've also designed and taught courses about herbology, biokinesiology, color therapy, women's health. And for a while, I was also a certified childbirth educator with the ICEA. That was a lot of fun. I love doing prenatal and pregnancy work. IPA has just recently started issuing badges. So this is just my last couple of badges that prove to you that I am a level 3 iridologist and a level 3 iridology instructor. Right. I am also a nutrition professional. Allison says, why please and thank ICEA, International Childbirth Education Association. PA, it's all these alphabet seeds. International Iridology Practitioners Association. We got it for you there, Allison? All right. So I'm also a trained nutrition coach, and so I'm affiliated with these 2 organizations. And I'm also a master herbalist affiliated with the Alberta Herbalist Association. Just before we dive into what we're going to talk about with iridology tonight, let's see what one of my students had to say about the dynamic iridology course. This is Karen Choate. She is a CNHP. She's actually now a traditional ND as well for me. Judith, I just returned from a regenerative detox course where iridology is implemented. I spread the word about what a wonderful teacher you are. Marie says the connection is so poor. I'm sorry, Marie. I wish I knew how to fix that. You will get the replay though. Okay. I spread the word about what a wonderful teacher you are. Most people I talked with did not have anywhere near the same experience with their iridology education. No support, they had unanswered questions and a lot of confusion. Mostly they finished their classes not knowing how to implement what they had learned. Like I said, right? I feel so absolutely blessed to have been taught by you. I feel totally supported, even still as I've graduated. It's like about 5 years ago now. I don't think there is anyone out there practicing, educating, and teaching iridology like you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart. I'm eternally grateful for your never-ending patience and support. I also asked how has learning iridology helped you in your business? Because this is a really important thing, right? You don't want to learn another skill just to have another skill. A good direction, correct? Isn't that why we want to keep learning? Because it's going to add value to what we do somehow, right? So Karen said, iridology has helped me to understand the relationships between different organs and organ systems more in depth. Iridology also gives me an advantage of seeing the potential for different genetic traits and qualities that may be underlying. By observing the constitution, for example, you can extrapolate how the person's body will likely respond to applications of healing methods. Therefore, it has helped me to expand my knowledge and increased efficiency at providing more precise recommendations for health-oriented options. All right. Thank you, Karen. Thank you. Now, let's get into it. Iridology has its roots in lots of ancient cultures. We used to think, well, maybe not you and me, but science evolves, and it used to be believed that the earth was flat. We now know differently from that. Some still believe the earth is flat, and they fail to keep up with the research, or they choose to not keep up with the research. It's true that all science evolves. Science is the art of asking questions, right? It's not the finding the absolute answer. It's science. It's the practice of asking questions to learn, once embraced as truth, has given a way to research and new discoveries. And good science will continue to do this. Good scientists will continue to ask questions, test their own hypotheses and those of other researchers. What we think of as final answers today are really stepping stones to future discoveries, even and especially in iridology. So we know that iridology was practiced in some way in Egypt, India, China, and Greece thousands of years ago, right? It's not a new thing, but it's been rediscovered. Modern history, we've got Ignaz van Petzschle, who was in Hungary. He was born in 1826. He was intrigued with eyes, and he became a medical doctor. He started studying in his patient's eyes with a 2-power magnifying glass. That's like nothing. That's like not even magnifying at all, but he was doing it with a 2-power magnifying glass. Then he would draw out what he saw. He would write out their symptoms, and he would started to correlate that he would see markings in a certain area, and he'd often hear symptoms for a certain organ. And he, from there, drew out one of the very first iridology maps. Interestingly, it's fairly close to what we know now. And that's with an extra 200 years of research. With the turn of the 1900s in Sweden, he very accurately determined that the more fibers we have per square inch in an iris, the more resilient that body is, the more able it is to ward off disease, the faster it will recover afterwards as well. So if something happens, they have an accident, they break a bone, they're going to heal a little faster than someone who doesn't have that real healthy resiliency in their eyes. We have Pastor Emanuel Falca, who was also sort of around the turn of the 1900s in Germany. He started defining constitutions. In level 1 and level 2, and in constitutional iridology, we work with 3 primary constitutions and a handful of subtypes from those constitutions. These constitutions give us a baseline of understanding for that person's chemistry. Rudolf Schnabel, who loved what he said, he researched pigment and pupil tonus. So he was looking at pupil size and shape and other little colors that could show up in an iris, because blue eyes are not always pure blue, right? And brown eyes are sometimes not pure brown. And sometimes you've got eyes that are a mix of blue and brown. So he said it was no easy task, and those who believe or would like to believe that handling iridoscopy or iridology can be learned within a few weeks or even days are mistaken and do a disservice to a good cause. I agree with Rudolph. That is one of the reasons I will never teach this course, teach the dynamic iridology course as a 5-day intensive or a 6-day intensive or 2-3-day weekends. Never. You can't learn everything there is to learn, even at these levels, in that short of time. Right, so we spread it out. In Europe, we had Joseph Unger continued, and he was a student of Schnabel's. He became a naturopath. He was concerned that there were so many different iridologists doing so much different research and creating their own language around iridology. He wanted to unify it. He wanted everyone to agree that we call this marking this, and this is what it means. We call that marking that, and this is what that means. He also knew that students were reading books and accepting the printed word about iridology before adequate research was completed. Many of the early researchers were publishing books based on their theories, and they were publishing the books before adequate studies had been done to prove the theories. And that's where, to this day, we have some of the misinformation, right? It's because those theories have been hung on to for all these decades, 100 years, and people aren't willing to let them go. You can't believe everything you read, right? He and Joseph personally refused to publish his work until it had been analyzed and reviewed by his professional peers. And so many of those things that were originally published have been proven to be not correct. They were a good place to start asking questions, and for that we are grateful. Then we have Joseph Deck, who pioneered photography for iridology. He also published books about constitutional iridology, and some of his work is the foundation of the constitutional work that we teach because it has borne out the test of time. Theodore Krieger said that iridology is not a standalone assessment tool. He wanted to see it used with other things like urine analysis, hand analysis, fingernails, tongue, feces analysis. He believes that iridology is the #1 assessment tool, but that it does really well to corroborate with other types of assessment as well. Bernard Jensen. We love Bernard Jensen. He kept iridology alive through the Cold War years, single-handedly. When nobody else was doing iridology, he kept it going. Now, a lot of what he was working with are things that have been disproved. That doesn't mean he did not do a lot of people good, because he did a lot of people a lot of good, and we are grateful for his tenacity and for his generosity in the work that he did. In the early 1980s, Harry Wolff, who is an American-born German, fluent in German, got his hands on a book by Joseph Deck. It was written in German, and Harry started reading it. And he was wowed by it. He was so intrigued by this. He was a massage therapist. I think he was some other holistic practitioner kinds of things as well. And he started practicing this style of iridology and teaching little seminars at little fairs and whatever. And then he connected with Bill Cardona, who at the time was a registered pharmacist. And together, and Bill fell in love with this, and they started teaching workshops. Eventually, it led to the forming of an organization that became what is now known as IPA. Bill taught iridology at Bastyr Naturopathic School in Seattle for quite a few years, and Bill went on to become a naturopath. Bill is my constitutional instructor, and I'm still in touch with him, and I'm ever so grateful for his support. We're going to touch briefly on the 3 primary styles of iridology that are practiced in North America. Okay, just as I catch my breath, any questions so far? What are you thinking so far? Did you realize that iridology was thousands of years old? Did you realize that it has grown and developed? Or was that a surprise to you? I'd love to see some comments on that in the chat box. The three styles of iridology: Jensen, Rayed, and constitutional. We're going to touch on these while you're telling me if anything so far has been a surprise to you, or if you expected it to be this way. Jensen was originally taught by Bernard Jensen, right? That makes good sense. He taught that the iris changes when the body changes, that healing lines would appear in the iris, and we'll be looking at iris photos in a bit, and you'll see what lines would look like, and that lacunae, or what he called lesion shape and size, could also be changed. We now know that's not correct, and we now understand why he said that. Traditional Jensenian iridologists have often done iris readings cold with no background information from a client. There's a well-known healer who has since retired. He used to be here in Calgary. And it is said that if you went in to see him, he was also a herbalist, you would sit across a small desk from him. He would look at your eyes. If you dared to try to say a word, he would shush you. And he would literally shush you. He would look at your eyes for 10 or 15 minutes, and then he would write down what herbs you needed to pick up at the front desk, and you'd go out and you pick them up, and that was your appointment. Come back in 3 weeks, right? So they would often do it just cold. They would be telling you what was wrong. We don't do it that way. Carol says, amazing how much has stayed the same and how it has developed over time. Yeah, it's done some interesting morphs. Traditional Jensenian iridologists have a very different style from modern Jensenians. When Bernard passed away, before he passed away, he gave his daughter-in-law permission, his blessing, to update his work. And so she has updated it a lot with so much constitutional. You still see elements of Jensen in there. And so the people who've studied through Ellen Tart Jensen tend to have a more constitutional approach than if they had studied with Bernard Jensen. Constitutional iridology originated with Joseph Deck and others. There was a few other researchers who focused on the constitutions. It is used by medical doctors in Italy, Germany, and Russia. I had a client in just a few months back who is from a little country that butts up against Russia, and I don't remember the name of it. She herself is a medical doctor, as is her husband. They immigrated to Canada. She's not practicing medicine just now, but she came in to see me because she said, we do iridology in Europe, and there's nobody here that will do it for me. So that's why I'm here to see you. And it's like, very cool, very cool. Correlative medical studies are being done. There is current research happening. It's so exciting. And constitutional teaches us that the eyes are a reflection of the genetic structure of the body. Jensen, remember, said that we can change what we see in the eyes. That would say that we can change your genes. Constitutional says what we see in the irides is about genetics, how your body's put together and how it wants to function. And constitutional is the foundation of dynamic iridology. All right, constitutional, this is what I love. This is probably my biggest takeaway, aside from the basic, the teachings of constitutional. This is what Bill Cardano taught me, and I love this. Iridology does not give us the answers. It teaches us what questions to ask. Client comes in with symptoms. We look at their eyes. We begin to understand from what we see in their eyes why they have these symptoms, and that together coaches us to ask the right kinds of questions specific to that client to get the information we need to create the protocol the client needs. How does that sound? We're not crystal balling this. We're not looking at their eyes and going, you have this wrong, this wrong, this wrong. But we are correlating their eyes to their symptoms to understand how the body is working, and to then understand the questions we need to ask and the way we need to coach that client. Marie says, perfect, excellent. This is amazing, says Christine. So good, so good. Other iris and sclera changes may continue to become visible with time, revealing areas that may need support. We'll talk a little bit about iris changes. Sclera is very dynamic. It's very in the here and the now. It shows you where the hot spots are right now. When you understand the different kinds of things we see in the sclera, you understand the body chemistry a whole lot better. We want background information. I get some people coming in to see me who have been to a Jensening iridologist and they just want to sit in the chair and have me tell them everything that's wrong with them. And I will not play that game. I did that for the first 10 years of my practice because I was a Jensening at the beginning. And when it didn't work the way I thought it was supposed to, the way I'd been taught it should have worked, some of you are in that boat, I was ready to quit. But that was the very moment that constitutional came into my world, right? And I didn't look back. I didn't even have to struggle to undo what I'd learned. I just moved forward and it was so good, so good. So I love that we have background information. You know, with the way this teaches us to ask questions, what I find is my clients, number one, will say to me things like, no one's ever asked me that before. That's great. That's really great. Number two, my clients will say, you listen to what I'm saying. Nobody else listens to what I'm saying. And often when they're leaving an appointment, they'll say, thank you for listening to me. I know you heard me, right? And that is what a whole big part of what holistic work is about, right? It's about hearing and understanding and creating connection. Let's look at what an eyeball looks like. You all know your eye. You all know what an eye looks like, right? But we need to know this if we're going to start looking at eyes from an iridology perspective, right? And this is a part of why, this is just the tip of the iceberg of why you need to have that college level anatomy and physiology course under your belt in order to learn iridology. Yeah, you need to know the anatomy of the eye, but you need to know the anatomy of the whole body. You need to know a little bit, at least, about how the pancreas and the liver work together. You need to know how the liver can influence the kidneys. You need to know how the liver influences inflammation through the body. Oh, the pancreas does that too. You need to know how the thyroid impacts blood pressure and blood sugars, and right? So really important to have that information. As we're looking at this diagram of, or this drawing of an eye, we're going to start at the outside. We've got first off the sclera, which is the white part of the eye. The sclera is very tough and it helps the eyeball to hold its shape. The sclera continues around the optic nerve and protects the optic nerve. Very cool, because the eyeball itself is a nerve receptor directly connected to the brain. It's actually the end of a nerve pathway, right? You probably remember that from high school biology. The very front of the eye, the sclera becomes clear, and that is the cornea. We need that to be clear or we can't see. We're going to skip the chambers here. We're going to come straight to what we've got here. This is the iris, the lens, and the gap in the iris is the pupil, right? So this is the thing that we are going to be focusing on today. We're not going to do much with the sclera at all today. We're not going to do anything really with the pupil either. We're going to focus on the iris. All right, so I want you, as we're doing this, as we're looking at eyes, I want you to think about people you know who have, let's start with blue eyes. All right, how many of you have blue eyes? Give me blue in the chat box if you've got blue eyes. Marie's got blue. Yeah, Christine and Shannon. Excellent. Who else has blue eyes? Blue eyes are actually one of the least common colors. Brown is the most common worldwide. All right. So as we talk about this, you blue-eyed beauties, I want you to think about if anything that we're talking about applies to you. Now, it's not going to be that everything applies, because that would mean that we were all exactly the same, right? So the first thing you need to know about constitutional iridology, unlike other styles of iridology, is we rely very little on mapping. And mapping is when we have something like this, and you've seen many charts like this. Some of them are much more complex than this. And where we start saying, well, this is where the kidneys would be, and this is the left eye, so this is where the lungs would be, and this is where the throat and the thyroid would be, right? We do that very last, because that's getting into slicing and dicing. That's not constitution. Constitution is what is the whole eye telling us. And our focus is on the whole person. We only dissect the person at the end, or if it's necessary. Occasionally it is necessary to do it earlier on, but we don't focus on it. That alone saves time and increases our efficiency and our efficacy in doing an iris assessment. You'll see what I mean as we go along. This is a quintessential example of a lymphatic iris. And it our common health concerns that we see more of in these beautiful lymphatic eyes are things like they'll focus around mucous membranes, acid levels, and lymphatics. So when we see a blue eye, first off, we're going to ask our client, what would you like my help with? And they're going to give us that list of symptoms that made them book the appointment. And you're going to see some of these high acid situations in your lymphatic people. Your first question after what would you like my help with is there a personal or family history of asthma, allergies, arthritis, eczema, psoriasis, kidney conditions? Those are all high acid situations. Those are just the most common ones. They might not have any of those, or they might have many of them. If they don't have any, maybe they're not old enough to have had to created the problem. Or maybe if they don't have any of them, they learned at an early age how to take care of themselves. And so they're keeping their chemistry balanced, right? So this is why we can't look at an eye and tell a client what is wrong with them, because we don't know what they are doing for their health yet. Does that make sense? If you don't know what they're doing, you don't know what can be going wrong. Okay. So I'm not looking at tiny details yet. I'm not looking at, oh, I did not mean to do that. I'm not looking at the pigments. We've got all these little freckles of color, little washes of color. I'm not looking at individual fibers that are doing funny things. I'm not looking at these little gaps. I am just looking at the fact that this is a blue eye. Now, for it to be a lymphatic eye, we must have some blue visible, and we must see some of the fiber structure. These threads are what we call fiber structure. This is the fiber. The fiber may not always look this neatly organized in a lymphatic eye, but if this is what we see in this person, this fiber structure is not going to change. This is their genetic blueprint. The color, the base color, and the way the fibers are sitting. So again, with these people, we'll only focus on specific markings as they are relevant to what our client wants help with, at least for the first few appointments, right? We need to hear what our client wants help with. We need to focus on what the client has asked for help with and get them making good progress. Make sure they're following instructions well. Make sure that they know they've been heard. Develop that trust and rapport. When we've got them feeling really good, then if they are open to it, we can say, hey, do you want to do some preventive work now that we've taken care of the issues that you were concerned about? And then we can start slicing and dicing on things that they maybe didn't even think they had a concern with. Does that make sense? Let me know in the chat box if that makes sense. Marie says, yes. Excellent, excellent. Focus, focus, focus. You know, I think back to when my children were young, one of our boys had asthma, and I was doing triathlon back then, and he was doing triathlon with me, which was very cool. So, you know, I would always, he would do his pool swim, and then he'd do his little bike ride, and then I would meet him for the run, and I would run along beside him because he had asthma, and I would have asthma herbs that I could give to him as he was running to keep the asthma from getting out of control. And we've done a lot of work on him, and it's not an issue anymore now that he's like 28 years old or something like that. I'm a bad mom. I don't know how old my kids are. And so, but I took him to the doctor, and I asked the doctor, this was a new doctor. I asked him, would it be wise for us to have a puffer just to use for when he's training and when he's competing? And instead of addressing what I was there for, we had my youngest daughter there as well. And he focused on the daughter, and he said, do you see she's got a problem with her eyes? And I said, no, she doesn't. He said, yes, she does. I said, no, she doesn't. He said, oh yeah, I can see she's got a problem with her eyes. He totally ignored my son and the reason we were there, right? So I said, fine, she's got a problem with her eyes. I'll take her to our eye doctor. Took her to our eye doctor, who was also a vision specialist, not just for glasses, but for how do you use your eyes? And Dr. Annie worked with our daughter for like 45 minutes. She said, I don't know what the other doctor was talking about. And I mean, no professional disrespect, but I can't make your daughter's eyes do anything other than what they're supposed to do. I went, yeah, I know. We never went back to that family doctor again because he clearly couldn't listen, right? So we always start with listening to our client. What is their primary concern right now? And how do we work with that, right? And then as we build trust, we can do other things. So the other thing to be aware of is, for example, if you have a client who has a lung issue, we're looking at the lung issue, but we also then need to look at what are the other organs that would be affected by a lung issue. What are the other organs that can aggravate a lung issue, right? That's connecting the dots. So if we've got a lung issue, then we probably have a skin issue. We probably have a digestion issue. We probably have an elimination issue, right? So yeah, we're going to do lung, but we have to work through the chain of organs that are likely not doing their jobs properly. Does that make sense? And we can see that all in an iris assessment, which organs genetically want to be out of balance. Is that making sense? If that makes sense, give me a makes sense. So again, lungs, I'm going to look at the lung zones, the bronchioles. I'm going to look at acid tendencies, kidneys, lymphatic, skin, stomach, intestinal tract, since they all have an impact on the lungs. I may not need to do something with each of those, but I might need to do something with some of them. I'd also look at specific areas of the sclera. I would look at the pupil shape, and those add a lot more depth to our assessment, even though they're not specific to a lymphatic iris. Here's another beautiful lymphatic iris. Now, again, we've got so many shades of blue, right? You can have that beautiful blue that we were just looking at. We can have that steel gray blue that we're looking at here. Notice we've got other colors in this eye. The fact that we have steel gray blue means this is a lymphatic iris. And we've got the fibers here as well. So we know this is a lymphatic iris. All of these other colors give us more information. Right? And that information will be important at some stage of our assessment here. We will often see these other colors, whether it's a wash or whether it's a freckle, in a lymphatic iris. So if you think you've got, do you have, let me ask this a better way. Do you have other colors in your blue eyes? Christine says, can you get as deep as knowing if someone has an autoimmune condition or issues with immunoglobulins? Not specifically. You might see some general tendencies on the autoimmune, but not with immunoglobulins. That would probably require, I don't know, maybe live cell analysis. Maybe they can do that. And for that one, I would be, I often have my clients bring in lab tests as well, right? And so they bring in their labs and we correlate their labs to their symptoms to their eyes to understand where we need to go with this. So for example, we might see an indicator, now let me rephrase this. Lymphatic constitution people are a little more prone to thyroid imbalances, even when there are no indicators in the thyroid field. We just know they are. And so we want to watch for that. Now, thyroid and parathyroid imbalances can lead to calcium assimilation issues. So we would want to ask, if it's appropriate for this client, questions around personal and family history of thyroid and parathyroid issues and bone health, right? So one of my first questions is always, is there a personal or family history of anything? And if they give me something about osteoporosis or thyroid, and they are a lymphatic constitution, I'm starting to connect the dots there to understand what the issues are. You know, if they're not assimilating calcium well, that's an acid imbalance problem, right? And that's going to take us back to the stomach to correct that acid imbalance so that we can assimilate calcium better. Our goal here isn't to use iridology like some kind of crystal ball. This is not a party game of guess what's wrong with me, right? Constitutional iridology is about understanding the constitution of the person so we can understand where they are less resilient and more resilient, so we can understand why their health is the way it is and guide them to better health. Along the way, the symptoms will subside, But the goal isn't symptom mitigation. You can do that with drugs, right? The goal here is to find the root cause by tracing things back so that we can help them create better health and ultimately relieve their symptoms as well. Does that make sense that we always want to trace things back to the root cause, not just chase a symptom? Yeah, Marie says yes. Excellent, excellent. Anybody else agree with that? That it's always best to work to find the root cause. Sometimes you have to do something to placate a symptom, but we do need to work to find the root cause, right? That is the tip of the iceberg introduction to the lymphatic constitution out of the 3 we're going to cover. So I'm just giving you just a real skim over. Like, we spend a full 2 hours in the very first lesson covering the 3 constitutions. We're going through them much more quickly and with not quite as much detail as we would get in the full class. This is a true brown eye. Carol says, what happens if you can't find the root cause? Well, you just have to shoot them and put them out of their misery. No, I'm just kidding. Sorry. I am cheeky at times. You will find a root cause eventually. Sometimes it does take trial and error. Sometimes the eyes are so complex that you have to do some trial and error work with them. Sometimes the root cause is actually not in their body as well. Sometimes it would be like their house has mold, right? And you need to get rid of the mold, for instance. So there's some things that can be pretty tricky. This is a true brown eye. How many of you have brown eyes? If you've got brown eyes, let me know in the chat box. While you're doing that, Amy's got brown. Yay, Amy, go you. Fantastic. Anybody else have brown eyes? Brown is the most common eye color in the world. ML has brown, Jennifer has green. Green is actually a variation on a theme of blue, on a theme of lymphatic, Jennifer. Okay, so here we go with our true brown eyes. Now, what you're going to notice is we have no blue. And we also do not see the threads or the fibers in the eyes. We've got gaps in the fibers. That's what these black lines are. But we don't see the individual fibers in this eye. So that's how you know it's a true brown eye. There's no blue and there's no fibers. That's going to make it brown. For our brown-eyed people, liver and blood are the key areas to focus on for their inherent predispositions. All right, so people with hematogenic eyes are more inherently prone to, this is a long list, but I want you to see if you can see the connections between these things, right? Listen to this carefully. Spleen, stomach and digestion, circulation and heart, varicose veins. They tend to be to the more alkaline side, and they need acid, but they need acid to promote their mineral assimilation. Their mineral balance tends to be a little bit tenuous, especially for calcium, because they tend to be too alkaline. And because those minerals tend to be out of balance, they are more prone to endocrine and metabolic issues. So depending on what symptoms or imbalances your client wants help with, the questions you might ask based on iridology could include things like, that could be anything from white cells, red cells, whatever. It can be anything in the blood. Allergies, because the liver is out of balance. Immune issues due to liver imbalance. Hormonal issues due to liver imbalances. Blood lipid imbalances, including cholesterol and triglycerides, due to liver imbalances. Weight issues due to liver imbalances. Are you seeing a theme here? Are you seeing a theme? Yeah. Are you? Let me know if you saw a theme in there. Now, you wouldn't have to ask all those questions. You would only ask the questions that relate to the client's issues. Carol, absolutely, the theme is liver. Now, if you know someone whom you're pretty sure has hematogenic eyes, now you know what to watch for with them, right? Again, this is just the tip of the iceberg. In the course, we go into What are their emotional traits typically like? What are their physical traits typically like? What kinds of diet do they need more of? What kinds of herbs and supplements do they need more of? We talk a lot more about the chemistry of their body. So when we see an eye like this, we've got lots of other shapes and lines happening in here. And we dive into those kinds of things in the course as well, because they all mean something. This is a biliary iris. So Christine says if they have any sign of blue within the brown, is it lymphatic or is it dependent on the root? If you see any blue, it's lymphatic. And the brown gives us another layer of information. Okay. So biliary, this is the type that back as a Jensenian iridologist, I would have said this person needs to cleanse. They're highly toxic. Oh my goodness, we've got to fast you and cleanse you and scrub you clean. How do we know this is a biliary eye? We do not see any blue, but we do see some fibers. Okay. So if we see some fibers, but we do not see blue, then we know it's biliary. Carol says, I finally understand this one. Yay, Carol, so good, so good. This was the one that I found the hardest to understand when I first learned constitutional. Bill Cardona was the most patient man. At least it looked like he was patient in his email. I'm sure he was. I'm sure that if I had been in his shoes, I would have been rolling my eyes till I had a headache for the kinds of questions I was asking. Really, it was pretty out there. But, you know, once you get it, you get it. So this is good. So no blue, we see some fibers. They might have some green. They might have some gold. And Carol says, you were also great at teaching this. Thank you so much. Because I struggled to learn it, right? Absolutely. So here again, we might have gold. We might see green in here, but we see no blue whatsoever. Often these people will have a darker band around the pupil. So when you see the word biliary, what do you think of? What does biliary make you think of? What does biliary make you think of? Gallbladder? Gallbladder could be involved in this, Marie. Liver? Yeah, liver. Think of bilious. The liver makes bile. Of course, that is stored in the gallbladder. Excellent. So we're looking at liver here is one of their big issues. So these people are thought to be, generally, they're often the offspring of a lymphatic and a hematogenic parent. Right now, it might be that the lymphatic parent was a few generations ago, like a grandparent or a great grandparent, or same with the hematogenic. So it might not be their immediate first generation parents, but we have a lymphatic and a hematogenic somewhere in the fairly near bloodline. And if one of them was hematogenic, we know we've got that liver undercurrent. If another was lymphatic, we've got that acid predisposition, right? Right. So this is so important. So questions to ask here, again, circle around the client's symptoms, around personal and family history. So we're going to be thinking about, digestive issues, stomach issues of all kinds. We're going to be thinking about liver. And when you think about liver, remember liver does over 500 different jobs, right? And with that, that means liver is involved in immune function, lipid balance, blood sugars, triglycerides, allergies, immune, so much more. We want to think about gallbladder, okay? And with that, we might be thinking about gallstone formation. There's a lot of emotion that goes with that too. We might be thinking about pancreas, okay? So we want to be thinking about blood sugar balance. We also need to think about carbohydrate digestion as well, right? So just, there's some comments. Jennifer says, I missed the difference between brown eyes. What makes this one different? The fact that we do not see, so similar to brown in that there's no blue in the eye, different from brown because here we see fibers. Does that help, Jennifer? Are you good with this? Remember, the brown eye had no fibers visible. Biliary, we see some fibers in here. Okay. All right. So how is this doing for you? What's your biggest takeaway so far? What's the thing where you went, oh, I didn't know that, or that is so cool? What's your biggest takeaway? Type of diet, vegetarian may be a problem for this constitution. I tend to think vegetarian can be a problem for a lot of constitutions from what I see with my clients. So, but we do talk a lot about diet in the course to help ascertain which ones should and which ones can do vegetarian more easily for a longer period of time, right? Christine says, this is so amazing. I can't wait to look at my husband's eyes. Carol says, I love how everything connects. So good. So good. So good. Okay. So now we want to look at layers because the eye is made up of layers of fiber. When we've got an even brown eye, it means that we've got a lot of pigment that's hiding the fibers. We don't see the structure beneath. In lymphatic and biliary eyes, we begin to see that we can have openings in the top layer and see the fibers that are down a layer, right? So when we see these openings like this, these fibers are actually down a layer. This fiber is sitting on top. All right. So we also see that we've got shading. We've got some little darker areas in here. These are all giving us information. We've got fibers that look like they are sitting a little bit higher on the surface, like we've got some thick ones in this eye, and these just look like they're sitting very thick, very raised, very almost swollen on the surface of the eye. We've got rings going around the eye. These are all giving us more information, more questions to ask. This is in the cornea. This white wash is in the cornea. Again, it gives us more information. All of these things help us understand more about this person's chemistry, why they've got their symptoms, and the questions we need to ask them. So when I started learning iridology in 1979, constitutional was not yet here in Canada. It hadn't come up. And it was not widespread in the US either. And so I studied and embraced what was available, which was ginseng. I worked with that for like 10 years. About halfway through that, I was starting to get frustrated. I would see a biliary eye, which ginseng would have said was toxic and needed cleansing. And I would put that client on a cleanse and on a fast and high-powered changes in their life. And we wouldn't see any difference in their eyes. I got really frustrated. I'd see an eye like this, and I was taught that each of these was a lesion in the Jensenian terms. And each of these meant there was a pathological problem happening right now that needed to be fixed. And if we fixed it, this would go away. We now know that is not accurate. We know it's not true, right? In constitutional iridology, we know that these are inherited, passed down from generation to generation. And in this person's lifetime, they're not going to change. Now, if this person did a lot of the right kinds of dietary things before they parented children, before they conceived children, they will be able to pass on some slightly better stuff DNA-wise to their kids, and their children might have fewer of these or different of these in their eyes. So if this person comes in, let me just see where I am in my notes here. We always want to find out what our client symptoms are. We also want to find out what they're currently doing for their health, right? If this person is on track, if they're doing the right things for their health and they're getting good results, then we encourage them to continue that. We might tweak the program a little bit for them. If they're not on track, then we might need to coach them. They'll be open to coaching, hopefully. And in an eye like this, we're going to need to work, likely need to work on blood sugar balancing and hormonal balance. We'll probably need to support digestion. And emotionally, this person needs to be creative. We're going to need to encourage this person to find some creative outlet. As she implements those different changes as they are appropriate in her life, we're going to see her symptoms change. Her eyes won't change, but her health will improve. What we see in the eyes will stay because it's her genetic blueprint. And what we're doing is we're not necessarily changing her genes. We're working with epigenetics, where through diet and through lifestyle and through supplements, we are helping her to express her genes in a more positive way. Right? Does that make sense? When people are on a lousy diet, they're eating junk food, they're not taking care of themselves, the genes will express in a more negative way. The changes we want to help her implement will help her to express her genes in a better way. So quick case study here. We're going to look at her eyes with two different types of lighting so you can see how tech changes the output and the assessment. She came to me wanting to have a baby. She had been trying with her husband for about 6 months and nothing had happened. Her husband's semen analysis was good. She was having periods every 28 days. She described her menstrual flow as a smear on the tissue. Now, that's a problem. She said, I never need to use sanitary products. There's never a flow. It's just a smear on the tissue. Her doctor said that was just fine, but that seems kind of out of balance to me. Like there's not enough of an endometrial lining developing, which means that she's probably got a hormone imbalance. She also had almost no ovulatory mucus. Now, when I look at her eyes, I saw this little teeny brownish pigment right there. And I instantly wondered if she had MTHFR. Now, she hadn't heard of that, and I didn't bring it up with her because I don't diagnose. But that meant that I needed to make sure that she was taking, that her prenatal vitamin had methylated Bs in it. I'm going to tie this in a little bit more on the next slide. So we also have lots of lacunae that are attached to the collarette. That also tells me that she has a predisposition, non-specifically, to endocrine imbalance. The most common predispositions we see with that one would be blood sugars, adrenals, and thyroid. Now, notice what we can see in this eye. We've got two lights on each photo. It's her right eye and her left eye. When we turn off one of each of those lights, do you see? I'm going to flip back. Look out here. We've got some bits of wrinkles showing up. But when we come down here and we turn off the light, can you see that the wrinkles become more prominent? Okay, so these are contraction furrows. These tell us that she is sympathetic dominant. Can you all see those contraction furrows, those wrinkles in her eyeball? If you can, give me wrinkles in the chat box. Give me wrinkles so I know that you can see this. So I asked her about her diet, and her diet was good. It was clean, but she didn't have enough protein and she did not have enough good fats. She was living on not much. Vegetables mostly, which is not a bad thing, but she wasn't getting her protein. So I asked her about stress because those contraction furrows tell me she internalizes her stress. So she burns through her B vitamins. And she's an HR professional in the oil patch, which means she's high stress all the time with hirings and firings and dealing with employees who have problems, and she needs to help connect them to the right resources. So we got her to do a prenatal vitamin that had methylated Bs. I felt and did the research for her that N-acetylcysteine would be beneficial and that omega-3 would be beneficial for her hormone balance. We added specific herbs on a cyclical basis, some for the follicular phase and some for the luteal phase. Within a few months, her menstrual flow required a pad. We were so excited. She'd never had that before in her life. And so we knew that we were moving in the right direction. She was also starting to see ovulation mucus, which is a very positive sign. And about 6 months into the process, she had a positive pregnancy test. Now at 23 weeks, at about 4 months along, she did 23andMe. And she sent me an email. I swear my computer was going to explode with this because it said she had the MTHFR defect. And she was so nervous. Have I hurt my baby? Is my baby going to be okay? And on and on and on. I said, well, I've actually had your back. I suspected that. And that's why we've got you on the prenatal vitamin that we've got you on. I didn't need to nitpick every single detail in her eye. I didn't need to pick apart every lacuna, every fiber that was not where it should be placed exactly and precisely. I didn't need that. I understand anatomy and physiology well enough that when I apply that to what I see in her eyes, I knew where we needed to go. I knew what questions to ask. So we need to be able to connect symptoms and the relevant iris markers. And again, that chain of iris markers that all work together from a pigment to the contraction furrows to the lacunae in order for us to create the protocol that worked for her. And we did tweak her protocol every month. We would look at her temperature charts and her mucus production based on what she'd recorded on her menstrual flow. And we tweaked her program literally every month until she got pregnant. And then through her entire pregnancy, we continued to meet and tweak her program monthly. In my early training, an eye like this, again, would have been an eye that was full of toxins, needed cleansing. And oh my goodness, you are so full of garbage. We need to clean you out. Now, the teachers who taught me that had before and after pictures that looked convincing. Lesions did look smaller. Lacunae is what we would really call them. Eyes did look bluer, but then I knew nothing about photographic technology. What I know now is that changing the camera or the strength of the flash or the shutter speed or the room lighting affects the image enough that you sometimes will think, well, that's a lymphatic eye, or no, it's really a biliary eye, and you can have a real hard time telling things apart. And a lot of iridologists that did not understand the importance of photographic integrity were publishing photos that did not have integrity and calling them before and after. So even back when I first started, we were shooting on print film, and we knew that different films shot with different levels of of red or green in them. We knew that different kinds of developing paper, photo paper, also shifted the output. And we knew that depending on how the photo lab was adjusting the settings on their equipment, that would change the output. The variables were huge and they were not being controlled for. So I was getting frustrated. I was about ready to walk away from it because this was not working. And that was again when I found constitutional. In this eye that we're looking at, this is a biliary eye. We see no blue and we do see fibers. So we've got liver. We've got enough other colors in here that are telling us kidneys are likely in need of some love genetically. Genetically, the kidneys are saying, help me, help me. We've got that sympathetic nervous system that wants to be running the show and internalizing stress. We've got some darker colors in the nutritive zone, teaching us that we probably should be supporting digestion on an ongoing basis. So what are the client's symptoms? Probably have some liver symptoms, maybe some kidneys and digestion, prone to holding on stress. Stress affects digestion, right? Everything goes around. I liken this to what we would call a First Nations dream catcher, right? If you've seen a Native American Indian dream catcher where they've got that one thread that winds around and creates that design on the hoop, it's kind of what it is. We've got a thread that goes around and around and around, as in we find one marking and, oh, well, that explains why we've got this. Oh, well, then that connects to this and that connects to something else. We can identify markings, but it's not a case of one marking means one problem. Instead, we need that anatomy and physiology understanding so that we understand how the organs work together, how they speak to each other. We need the family history to understand what our predispositions are. We need to know what the client's doing with their diet and their lifestyle for us to understand the impact that that's having on things, right? We need all of this information, but it doesn't take forever to gather, really 20 minutes. 20 minutes, and then we've got it, right? This is a client she's been a client of mine for over 40 years. She was one of my very first clients, and she still is my client. She started they come for a while, then they disappear because they're feeling good. And then they come back when they're not feeling great, and then they disappear again, right? So they're in and out. So she started coming back a few years ago. Now she's got a lot of nutrition and herbal training already, but she couldn't see the forest for the trees. And we often are not the best practitioners for ourselves. We often need to have our own A team. When she came back to see me this last go around, she wanted to lose weight. She wanted to bring her blood pressure down. Her cholesterol had climbed, her triglycerides were up, and her hemoglobin A1C was high. Now, her eyes don't show toxicity. They never will. They show inherent potential. When we see milky film like this that develops over time, that is not toxicity, and it's not something we're going to reverse, but it teaches us about her chemistry for the last several years. Because I've worked with this client for many years, and I know she's well read, we dove in really deep, really fast. I didn't need to pussyfoot my way in. To start working on her goals, we started constitutionally, not marker specific. We needed to start with liver, digestion, and her nervous system. So that meant that we needed to do some dietary changes and some supplements, things that she had set aside because there was a lot of stress. Her husband has 2 terminal illnesses with no prognosis. And so he's a bit of a narcissist and he's making life miserable. So she's got a lot of stress there, right? So we did things like got her to do a lower carb, higher protein diet and choose better fats. We got her to start walking for 30 minutes a day. We added to her omega-3, berberine. We worked on her gut biome and we gave her some support digesting her proteins and digesting her foods in general, and got her to start having protein at breakfast specifically as well. She lost 20 pounds in 3 months doing that. And within 3 months, her cholesterol, her triglycerides, and her blood pressure were all in the normal range. She got it. It worked really well. Well, about a year later, she had some significant family stress and she slipped off her program again. And the stress, I believe that heart attacks are stress induced, that there's a specific emotional stress that can trigger a heart attack. She had a heart attack. Fortunately, her husband was smart enough to realize they only lived 3 minutes from a major hospital. He realized if they called an ambulance, it would be 30 minutes getting there. So he loaded her into the car, took her in, and she got medical treatment, which was great because it meant that, she lived. She is on 9 different medications. So now we are working with primarily food and culinary herbs to work with getting her heart to be healthy and strong and getting all of her numbers to be in the right range, with the hopes that the doctors will see a way to recommend reducing the medications that she's on. Now, the stress has not resolved. There's still lots of stress in her family, but she's working really hard to get back on track. And she's starting to, she regained the weight during that first bout of stress. She's starting to see that come off. And so we're really excited that she's making some progress again. Really excited. In my original training, is the pigment in the right eye in the heart? I don't even know. I didn't even look. In her right eye, are you thinking this pigment, Carol? That's a little too far out, I think, to be heart, because that's a medial and the heart on the medial is quite small, right? So in my original training, we were taught that every one of these lacunae was a problem happening right now. In constitutional iridology, it didn't agree with that. It shows us that there's been something passed down through the generations, but it doesn't tell us whether it's active or not. It just says that this is something that's been passed down, that we want to watch for, not that there's a problem there right now. Pigments are not the accumulation of toxins. These are also genetic, and they can develop with time. As genes are turned on or turned off, pigment can settle into the eye, but it will never dissipate from the eye. The pigment gives us information about an organ that wants to be out of balance and an organ that is suffering because the first organ is out of balance. Iridology, constitutional iridology, teaches us to look for patterns and to understand the interrelationship of organs. And that if the person's already doing things that are supporting good health, there may be no symptoms, but that doesn't erase the inherent predisposition. So this person that we're looking at now may have issues with connective tissue, with kidneys not keeping up, with liver, with lymphatic system, with immune. But what are their symptoms? We would need to find out if they had symptoms in those directions. We'd need to know about diet and lifestyle. Our goal here is not to change the eyes. That's an old belief that we need to put to rest, that we change the eyes. The goal here is to improve the health. I mean, what would you rather have? Your eyes be a different color or better health? Seriously, most of us would choose better health, right? Right? Would you choose better health? I would. I absolutely would. I do every day. Those are the choices I make every day. So our goal here is to teach our client what they need to know for their body, and what they need to know right now might be different from what they need 5 years from now. Because chemistry changes, symptoms change, that changes how we interpret the eye and the recommendations we're going to make. This is a very dynamic, very fluid science, right? It's this fluid assessment system. Does that make sense? That what the assessment is this month might be different from what it is 5 years from now. Core elements will be the same. because it's going to still be a lymphatic eye. Symptoms will be different, and that may change how we assess. More pigments might be present. That will change how we assess, right? Old iridology says that this person has parasites, that this person is headed for a nervous breakdown, right? That's the old style. We now know that that is all incorrect. Constitutional iridology teaches us to look at the eye in the context of the owner. So this is an Asian woman, mid-30s. She and her husband had been trying for 3 years to have a baby. They had been to the fertility clinic, and the fertility clinic had not been, they'd, I think, done 2 IVFs or 2 IUIs, one or the other, and nothing had worked. And so I noted that she had contraction furrows. So I know she internalizes her stress. She burns through her B vitamins. That's one thing. And then I suspected from this one little pigment right here that she might have problems methylating. And then as I looked at her eyes, this is her, oh my goodness, her pupil's pretty centered. This is her right eye, which means that we're looking over here and we are seeing a lacuna or a radial furrow coming down through her ovary. So I'm seeing all this, and I'm seeing at the age of 35, she's got this white milky film forming at the top of her eye. So I asked her, have they said that you've got PCOS? Her cycles were 90 days, which is a classical, anything over 45 is classically PCOS. And so I asked her, have they said you've got PCOS? Oh yeah. Well, type 2 diabetes and PCOS are best friends. So I asked her, with what I see in the eyes, do you have type 2 diabetes? Has the doctor said that? Oh yes. Well, that explains a lot. So, I couldn't have guessed those things without looking at her eyes, because she was petite. She wasn't overweight. She didn't look classically PCOS or T2D. Not at all. To look at her on the street, you'd have been bumfuzzled by that, right? So we worked hard. We worked for 18 months, an appointment every month. It took us about 5 or 6 months to get her cycles down into that 30 to 35 day range. But then we worked for another full year, so 6 months and then a year. And I was about ready to, on that appointment at 18 months, I had laid awake all night thinking, how am I going to tell them I've done everything I know to do? That I don't think there's anything else I can do. She was having regular cycles with good intervals. She was having the ovulation mucus. Her temperature charts were beautiful. She wasn't conceiving. So when they came for that last appointment, they came in and they said, we need to tell you something. I'm going, oh, here it goes. They're going to fire me now, right? And they said, we did a pregnancy test this morning and it was positive. So, oh my goodness, we all cried. It was so good, so good, so good. And then we worked together for another year, saw her through the entire pregnancy. She did not develop gestational diabetes. She had a textbook pregnancy. She had a beautiful baby in a pretty quick labor and delivery. And then I worked with them for a few months after that to make sure that breastfeeding was established, that baby was growing well. It was so good, so good. This is another client returning to me after a 6-year absence. He came in, years ago because he wanted to feel better, but he wasn't desperate yet, so he didn't do his homework. Right. So when he started coming back to me, now in his mid-60s, his hemoglobin A1C was 7.2. His glomerular filtration rate was 61. At 60, they say you've got the beginnings of chronic kidney disease. His potassium was slightly low. His sugars were between 6.8 and 7.5. And so the doctors put him on metformin, but that gave him diarrhea. So they switched him to Glumetza and Giardians. They also put him on hydrochlorothiazide because he had elevated blood pressure, Trandolapril for his cholesterol, and sildenafil, which is Viagra, because the blood pressure medication meant that he could not perform sexually. He was also on Mylan torvastatin for his cholesterol. I also noticed that he was clearing his throat a lot, which tells me there's some reflux going on. Right. So we worked hard. We're still working hard. We fixed his diet, got him off a cinnamon bun and a muffin for breakfast and Cheerios for breakfast, got him onto protein and veggies for breakfast, fixed his lunch, fixed his supper, got him drinking water. And when we look at his eyes, we've got some digestive concerns here. We've got a lax tone in his intestinal tract. We've got the beginnings of that white film in his eye. And then if we look at his sclera, there's some markings there that we don't have time to get into today. But those basic things were enough to make me go, yeah, we're working on blood sugars with you, bud. So we did some L-arginine, the diet work, L-arginine, berberine, got him to walk 2 times a day for 30 minutes each time. We added protein digestive aid and a general enzyme to him as well. And within just a couple of months, we got his blood pressure down to 118/74. And the doctor was so impressed with the way it was holding, he started pulling the meds. We got his blood sugars down to between 5.9 and 6.3. We really need it below 5.9, but at least they're moving in the right direction. And we've just continued to work with him over the time. We've got everything improving, everything. We're not going to see changes in his eyes or in his sclerae or in his pupils. That's all going to, no, I lied there. Cancel that. We won't see changes in his irides, but we will eventually see potentially some changes in his sclera and some changes in the pupils as we continue to get him moving in the right direction. So with all of his work, he's really happy with the progress he's making, really happy. And so am I. So that brings us to the Dynamic Iridology Assessment System program. This is a course for people who have a cult. You need to have that A&P. Now, maybe you're a registered nurse or a massage therapist or a naturopath or a physical therapist. You're something where you had to do that A&P and you've got a license that says that you are trained in that way. That will suffice as proof. If any of you don't have A&P, reach out to me and I will give you a link to the A&P course that I recommend, and it is recognized by the International Iridology Practitioners Association to qualify you for certification when you finish your iridology training. This course is designed to help you not just learn iridology, but learn how to use iridology so that you don't have to spend overtime hours creating assessments or creating programs. We want you to be able to do your assessments and your program creation in your paid client time, because that will increase client compliance and long-term retention. The next course is starting on February 27th. Registration is open. And so if you've already got that A&P, I encourage you to grab that link. You know, if you're thinking, I really want the details about this course, I want to talk with Judith, I'm going to put that link in the chat box. There you go. Grab that link and schedule a time to meet with me to talk about this course, to see if it's really the right fit for you. We'll talk about where you're at, why you want to learn iridology, what your goals are. And, you know, if you've got that A&P and it sounds like you're a good fit, I will invite you to enroll and I will give you the enrollment link then. Right. So we do that through a little one-on-one. I promise it's not scary. It's not, you know, it's not judgmental. It's just us talking to see if this is really the right place for you to be. I want you to be in the right course at the right time. The Dynamic Iridology Assessment System for Health Professionals takes 20 classes. We meet once a week for about 2.25 to 2.5 hours. Every class, you can catch it on the replay. I take a limited number of students per cohort because I think the students learn better in small groups. That's my university training coming through. I think it still holds true for adults as well. We do live group mentoring twice each month via webinar. Oh, Carol, thank you for this. She says, it was the best 20 weeks of my time. Fantastic, Carol. Thank you. In addition to the 20 weeks, we have the twice each month live mentoring sessions where students bring cases or questions into a webinar where a webinar meeting, a web-based meeting, where we talk about their cases, their questions, their concerns, business questions, whatever. And you will not get kicked out of this even after you finish the course. You don't get kicked out of this even after you certify. You are welcome to come to these for as long as I am teaching. We have a student and alumni group. Ooh, I should have updated this. We're no longer on MeWe. We now have a private platform where you can, again, post cases, ask questions, where you can be kept up to speed on things that are happening in our world. You receive a 225-page digital textbook. So you're not having to buy another textbook. That might 45 pages of digital study notes as well. It helps you to prepare for your exam, but also helps you to prepare for working with clients. And IPA certification mentoring. The mentoring process is rigorous, and I will walk you through it and hold your hand through it to help you get it done so you can prepare for the IPA final exam. All right, and the final exam happens in 3 stages, and I want my students to be successful with that. Here's what Sophia Perez-Villar said. She's one of my graduates. She said, the commitment that Judith has for teaching is extraordinary, and the amount of support you get from this iridology course is fabulous. The material is very clear and thorough. The pace of the course is dynamic, but with enough time to integrate all the parts. As this was my second iridology course, I wasn't sure if this course would just be an add-on, but it has exceeded my expectations. I've learned lots from the course material and classes, expanded previous knowledge, and gained more confidence. I can see now how this course has helped me to get better answers from my clients and design an effective protocol in very little time. Highly recommended for beginners and advanced. We start at ground zero and we work our way up. Kimberly Zadelis said, if you're wondering which iridology course to take, you can stop looking, you've found it. Judith Cobb is an excellent instructor with years of experience. She is a caring and compassionate person who is dedicated to the field of iridology and her students. I personally practice both Eastern and Western physiology medicine and was very impressed with the layout of her program. She makes it easy for her students to balance work, life, and study. And last but not least, Sharon Bimbrose, many more of these, and you'll see them on various of my websites. Sharon is a naturopath from Australia. I'd already taken iridology as a part of my studies as a naturopath. However, Judith's course, Dynamic Iridology, surpassed my previous training in structure, content, delivery, documentation, and support. Judith taught in a manner that I could understand visually and auditory. Dynamic iridology was well delivered, inspiring and motivating, giving me the much needed structure to the knowledge I had already learned over the years. Dynamic iridology also provided me with the most up-to-date information, along with the added bonus of Judith's extensive experience of holistic health. In absolute appreciation, Judith, I thank you for making me a better iridologist. So with that, my friends, I would love to know if you're going to click the link. I would love to, if you are ready to potentially enroll in the course for February 27th, grab that link, schedule a time, let's chat, let's have a one-on-one, let's see if it's a good fit, and let's see if you are ready for this course. Love to chat with you. If you've got that college level A&P, that's critical. If you don't have that, we're not scheduling an appointment, but I will send you the link for the A&P. And otherwise, I think that's it. Any final comments or questions? Love to have those of you who are ready schedule a time to chat with me. Let's get you into the community, get you rubbing shoulders with other students and grads. All right. ML says, love it. ML, I hope that means I'm going to be speaking with you soon. Okay, I don't think there's any more comments coming in. Thank you so much for being with me tonight. I appreciate you making the time in your schedules to be here. I hope you've learned something that you can start using, but I also hope that you will consider joining me for the program. Look forward to speaking with you soon. Take care. Bye for now.